Hello everyone, Rise of the Phoenix here, and welcome to episode 3 of my Beginner's Guide to Europa Universalis 4. Today we're going to be going over the basics that you'll need to know to be successful in your first wars. I do want to point out really fast, this is intended to be a beginner's guide, so if you're an intermediate or more experienced player, you may not learn much from this video, but I would love to hear your comments on if I explained anything not very clearly or if I left anything important out. I want everybody to be able to learn together, so you pointing out things could help other people learn as well. So, in the interest of time, I have fast forwarded this game, or rather played the first couple years out. I've recruited up to my force limit. I formed a couple of alliances. That's going to be somewhat irrelevant for this video. And we are at our naval limit, and we have been building a spy network on Granada, because the first thing you need before you can declare a war is a casus belli. I think that's the correct pronunciation of it, or at least I'm close, which basically means you need a reason to go to war. Technically, you can declare war with no CB. That's how we'll be referring to it for the rest of the video, but there are some very harsh penalties for doing so, which means in most cases you don't want to do that. The most common CB that you're going to have is when you fabricate a claim on a province. This is going to let you say, hey, we are declaring war on you because we want to conquer that province. And this will get rid of any of those nasty stability modifiers, or penalties rather, that you get for declaring a no CB war. There are a ton of different CBs, diplomatic insult, trade superiority, humiliating your rival. But for this video, we're just going to cover the most common one, which is getting a claim. So, in order to do that, you want to figure out what country do you want to attack. We're going to be playing Castile. I think they're one of the best nations to play as a beginner, so all of my beginner's guides will likely stem from the viewpoint of Castile. We want to attack Granada because we want to finish conquering the Iberian Peninsula. Now, as Castile, we get a special mission. It's only available to us because we're playing Castile, that once we meet these requirements right here, which we have 100% force limit, 100% naval force limit, and manpower at least 60%, and we do have one general, we get claims. It says Castile gains a permanent claim on the Upper Andalusia area, which is this area right here, which just so happens to be Granada. In the interest of explaining CBs in full, I have went ahead and built a spy network. So to do that, you just click on whatever country that you want to war, diplomacy, covert actions, build spy network, and once you have a sizable enough spy network, you are allowed to fabricate on any province that they own or their subjects own. So if you want to go to war with someone's vassal, you spy on them and then fabricate on the vassal, not the other way around. So we're going to go ahead and put a claim on this province, Granada, I guess. The easiest way, in my opinion, to do that, if you're fabricating diplomatically, is just click on the province that you want to fabricate the claim on and click this handy button. It says, do we want to fabricate? Yes, so our spy network gets reduced by 20. That's the base cost to fabricate. There are modifiers that will increase or decrease that. Now we have a claim on them. One important thing to point out is when you're fabricating on people, they know about it, and so they are likely to try and pick up alliances. Now, in the interest of us being Castile, we're going to go ahead and pop the Reconquista, and now we actually get permanent claims, which are better than fabricated claims on these provinces. Fabricated claims expire, and they don't give you as much of a bonus in terms of core creation cost. I believe I'm going to go ahead and stop spying on them because we don't need to anymore. I believe a fabricated claim gives you a 10% reduced cost to core a province, where a permanent claim gives you a 25% reduced cost. All right, so we have our military trained, we know who we're fighting, we have our claims. Other important things is looking out for alliances. So Granada is allied with Morocco. Since they are going to be the target of a defensive war from their end, it is almost certain, and I can tell you for a fact since Morocco is not at war with anyone right now, that Morocco will choose to defend Granada. So that means we're going to be fighting Morocco as well as Granada. We do have an alliance with Portugal, and since it looks like they want land, they might join us. We'll see. I haven't actually unpaused to see if they will. So what we next want to check is, let's see how strong our military is compared to theirs. So I'm going to open the ledger, default hotkey L. It's also under your minimap, which is hidden below my camera. We're going to go to military, we're going to go to armies, and let's find, we want to see Morocco. I'm going to go ahead and sort alphabetically. That'll make it easier to find. Let's see. I do apologize real quick. I am still a little bit sick. So Morocco has a force limit of 19, and our other enemy is going to be Granada, and they have a force limit of 9. That's a total force limit of 28, and we have a force limit of 28. That's a pretty close war. It can be difficult to win offensive wars when you are even in terms of numbers with your opponent, because of some things we're going to talk about here in a minute. However, one advantage we can see is that Granada only has 6,000 troops, and if we open up the ledger, we can actually see that currently, even though they have a force limit of 9, which would be 9,000 troops total, they've only recruited 6,000. So they're a little bit below the force limit, and we can probably stack wipe them and just take them out very, very quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and unpause here. I was drilling our armies, so we are going to need to wait like a month so that our morale goes up. And you can see Morocco, or Granada rather, is reacting to us moving our troops in here. Now, this guy has moved 50% of the way to this province, which means he can no longer stop movement or be redirected, which means we can trap him here. His army does not have a general, which means it is much easier to stack wipe him. This would be an opportune time to declare war because we're pretty much guaranteed to stack wipe these guys and completely take them out of the war. Excuse me. One thing I do want to do first is make sure that our navy has an admiral, because we're going to need our navy to control this area so that we can cross the Straits of Gibraltar. Excuse me. If the enemy controls this, we're not going to be able to cross that channel and get into Morocco, which will be a big problem, because then we can't peace out Morocco. Alright, so we'll recruit our admiral, give him command, and we're going to tell our navy to go ahead and set sail into the straits, which should catch this Moroccan fleet out of position. They might make it over here, we'll have to see. Let me take one quick sip of water because of my throat. Alrighty, so it's very important that your units, when possible, and by that I mean 100% of the time in war, your armies should be commanded by a general, because it just makes them a bajillion times better. It's extremely important to always have a general. So Castile does start with a general, and I've also made our heir a general. The nice thing about rulers and heirs as general is they don't take upkeep past the force or past your leader limit. However, they can die. And if your ruler dies as a country like Castile or anyone else that is a feudal monarchy, you will lose 1 point of stability when your leader dies, which can be problematic if you're just throwing your leaders into battle and losing all kinds of stability. In this case, our heir is atrocious, so I actually kind of hope that he dies in battle so we can get a different heir. In a real game, we would probably just disinherit him because he is so bad. So let's go ahead and declare. We do have a free diplomat for there. And we will see Portugal is not going to join us. They don't want the land, so you can either offer your ally land if they're interested in it, or you can use 10 favors to call them in. We only have 4 favors with Portugal. 4 is less than 10, therefore we cannot call them in. Likewise, if we were to declare, well, actually, that's not a good example, probably because it's the Humiliate Rival CB, which we can't take land. It's likely that if we had claims on Morocco that Portugal would join us because they are highly interested in this Moroccan land. So it's going to be us on our own against two enemies. Go ahead and hit the declare button. We want to pick which one of these do we want to take. I'm just going to take Garnath. It's important to have a achievable war goal, because achieving your war goal is going to be extremely important for actually winning the war. So let's go ahead and trap those guys. So he's trapped there. Battle of the Straits of Gibraltar, we won. We caught that Moroccan fleet out of position. They are dead. We have stack wiped this because we trapped them excellently. So let's go ahead and siege down this stuff real quick. One important note when you're sieging down provinces is that you see this skull. This is the amount of attrition that your stack is going to suffer each month. So you do not want to have large stacks of units sitting in enemy land until it's occupied. We won another naval battle, very nice. We're going to want to go ahead and get our ships into port, that way they can repair. Alright, we have occupation of this province, so now that we occupy this province, it's not going to give us attrition as long as we don't exceed the supply limit. You can see that here, supply limit 17, weight with this army is 10. We are totally fine there. Let's move these stacks of cavalry over here. Move these guys over here because we want to block off this strait. I imagine we're going to need... Can we just march into here? No, we're going to need to get military access with Portugal so that we can march through their land. Thankfully, the Portuguese like us because we are allied and they are totally cool with that. Now let's see, none of our leaders have siege modifiers, so we don't need to worry about getting a leader in to lead this siege. Leaders with siege modifiers can be very important because sieges can take a very long time, especially early game. Alright, our fleet is done being repaired, so we're going to want to get a blockade on this province because since it's not blockaded, they actually get an advantage to defending this siege. We're just going to go for that. So let's get in here. I guess we can blockade it from right here because it's connected to the Straits of Gibraltar. So that's good. Go ahead and unpause again. I think we're also going to... Can we not cross here? Why can't we? Oh, we can't cross there because of this fort, I guess. So forts do exert an area of control. Let's root out our corruption. We have plenty of money. To where armies can't just march right past forts as long as it's within that area of control. So we're going to have to wait until this siege is completed so that we can march past that fort. So while the siege is going, I want to also discuss picking the right units for your war. So if you go to your military tab, now early game, we don't have as many options as later on. Since we're fighting an offensive war, we're going to want to make sure that we have units that have good offensive modifiers. Treason against Castile, that's unfortunate. Whatever, we'll take professionalism. I'm not really paying attention to these events too much right now, as this is just a tutorial video. So, in the case of, let's say we scroll down here, we can pick either Terraco infantry or free shooter infantry. If we're fighting an offensive war, we probably are going to want the free shooters. If we're fighting a defensive war, we probably want to choose Terraco because they have more defensive modifiers. These guys have more offensive modifiers. So that's an important consideration. Since we're fighting an offensive war, almost all of our battles are going to be offensive. We have won the siege. So basically the way it works is that percentage box you see right there when we were sieging that province is the percent chance of that province surrendering and giving us occupation of it. Let's see, I want to gain professionalism and lose money. We have plenty of money, that's fine. Alright, now that this fort is sieged down, we are able to cross the strait as soon as that battle is over, since we still have naval occupation. You could see probably for a split second there that these lines were actually red X's, which means we're not allowed to cross because we don't have naval control. Let's see, this province, or this army is 50% of the way to this province, which means we could trap them there, but this fort is exerting its area of control. That's not good. Our general just died. He died in the desert. Feels bad, so let's make sure we get our heir as a general there. So we're going to go ahead and start sieging down this province. Generally speaking, you want to use the minimum amount of troops to siege a fort because there are extra modifiers. You take extra attrition damage when you're sieging forts. All right, this army is moving to attack us, and what I like to do, we can usually trap the AI. I'll unpause, go like 1 day, and then repause, and as soon as these guys are 50% of the way there, we march our reinforcement army in. That way the AI is trapped. The AI is not particularly intelligent. So this is an important point to note as well. One of the most important map modes to have accessible is terrain, because EU4 is a highly strategic but not particularly deep tactical game. The battles are basically decided before they start based on things like your generals, which units you're using, and where you're fighting. You always want to be able to pick your terrain where possible. Since we are fighting in the mountains, we're actually getting a -2 penalty to our army's rolls. Now, in this case, it's not going to matter because our army is just so much bigger than Morocco's army. But in the case that this was an even fight, and you can see this massively smaller army was actually giving us a huge problem. And if you look at casualties, we lost, 9,000 dudes? And he only lost 6,000 even though his army was significantly smaller. He also had a slightly better early game general, but that is what it is. So it's very important that you try to pick your battles on terrain that favors you. And the way it works is if you're in the mountains or the hills or places like that, they have defensive bonuses. So the army that is considered the defending army is going to get those bonuses. One thing to note is even though Morocco attacked into us, which you would normally assume that means we're the defender, since we are sieging their province, anytime a fort is under siege, whoever is administering the siege is considered the attacker. So even though Morocco attacked into us, which you would think we'd be the defender, we're not because we're attacking the fort. So that always overrides that. So actually we're going to stay here. I'm going to shift and click consolidate regiments, and we're going to detach a siege. The D hotkey automatically detaches the minimum amount of troops you need to siege a province. One thing that it does not take into account, however, is your leader. These ships don't need to be repaired, so we can have them chill here. And I think, actually, we won't be too greedy. Normally, I would probably siege down this province simultaneously, and we might do that. If we see them marching back over here, we can quickly move back. So we'll detach a siege there as well, crank it up to 4 for a minute in the interest of time. Normally when you're a newer player, I would definitely recommend that you play your wars on 3 or maybe even 2, depending on how comfortable you are. Because you don't want your armies to get caught out of position or anything like that. You want to be able to lure the AI into battles of your choosing. So, attrition, as you can see, we had I believe it was a disease outbreak. I wasn't paying a ton of attention there. So we actually lost the men that we need as the minimum amount to siege this province. So we either have to wait until we get some reinforcements automatically, or we can just move a new stack in there. I'm just going to go ahead and move a new stack in there and consolidate up. So manpower. This is a very important thing to have in consideration. Oh, Morocco is coming for us here. Let's see. I don't know if we're going to be able to win that. Morocco might get the crossing penalty. Yeah, I think we actually stop this siege and get some reinforcements in there. Don't want to lose stability. So this is really bad for us. We don't have enough infantry here. We still managed to win. But that could have been much, much, much worse. So you always have an infantry to cavalry ratio, and I'm glad this came up. I didn't think to write it down in the notes, and I wanted to cover in this video. In our case, your army, excluding artillery, cannot be compromised of more than 50% cavalry, or else we don't have enough infantry to support those cavalry, which means we take a lot of extra casualties. And that's not a good thing. As you can see, we only have 12,000 manpower left. Manpower is like the fuel for your military conquests. We now have 11,390, and we still need 10,000 to fully reinforce our armies. So we're basically at 0 manpower already. And as you can see here, this is our war overview. We have achieved the war goal. We're 60% of the way to winning. We've lost 4,000 units to attrition. And when you think that our maximum manpower is only like 25,000, if we round up, and then let's round this up to like 5,000, especially if we keep the war going, it means we've lost a fifth. We've lost 20% of our maximum manpower just to units dying to attrition. Additionally, we've lost 20,000 troops fighting. Well, I guess 16,000 troops fighting, because 20,000 total minus the 4,000. So, especially early game, when you don't have a massive manpower pool, you really want to be careful with having large stacks of units marching around enemy territory and eating attrition. So, let's see if we can go ahead and peace out Morocco. Basically, what we want to do is, Granada's not going to want to surrender because they still have Morocco fighting on their behalf. Even though we fully occupy Granada, they think, hey, maybe Morocco can win this for us. So they're not going to want to surrender to us. So it looks like Morocco does not want to give up yet, mainly because of this ongoing naval battle. That gives them a minus 45 modifier to wanting to surrender. The other thing is, they hold their capital. So one important thing to do if you're just trying to peace out a defensive ally is you want to go ahead and take their capital. That way their enthusiasm for the war is pretty much shattered. Well, they have a huge army there. I guess they do have as many troops as we do, or they're able to get as many as we can. So I'm going to go ahead, since we are Castile and we have plenty of money, I'm going to recruit some mercenaries just to help us out here end this war, because I don't want the video to be taking forever. We also need to trap this army. So we won another sea battle very decisively. Unfortunately, we lost one heavy ship. Those are very expensive, but we absolutely crushed the Granadan fleet there. They have nothing left, so that's extremely good. We definitely need to repair our ships now. All right, 50% of the way there. So thankfully, Morocco should go ahead and get that crossing penalty. Although we have the terrain penalty on us, so we're going to be taking tons more casualties. We might actually lose this fight because of that terrain. And you can see there, we took an absolute absurd amount of casualties. And I'm sure they're definitely not going to want to peace out now. Yeah, minus 11% though, or minus 11 chance, or desire to surrender, I guess you would call it. So we're going to get some mercenaries in here. We're still making tons of money, so that's not what we want. We want some more mercenaries. So the nice thing about mercenaries is they don't eat up your manpower pool, and they are recruited more quickly. However, they do cost an incredible amount of money compared to your normal units. So you want to be very careful with mercenaries, especially if you're playing as a smaller nation. If you're playing somebody like Castile, like we are, that we have a great economy, and as soon as this war is over, we're going to be able to, regain our money. No problem. We'll be able to get rid of our mercenaries and get our money back. Thankfully, the French finally surrendered, or England surrendered to the French. We did have an alliance with France, and they called us in against England at the beginning of the game, so we'll just have to ignore that for now. Let's see if Morocco. So Morocco is at medium war enthusiasm now. So they may be willing to sue for peace, and they are. So basically the way it works is any given province is worth a certain amount of war score. We have a 20% war score against Morocco. So we are just piecing out Morocco. That way the war will be between us and Granada. Granada is already fully occupied. So if we piece out Morocco, then we're going to have a 100% war score against just us versus Granada. So I have a 20% war score against Morocco, and it's probably not going to be enough to take any provinces. Now, if I was actually playing through this game, since we have the economy to support these mercenaries, I would probably crush Morocco a little bit harder and try to pick up 1 or 2 provinces. But in the interest of time and in the interest of our already depleted manpower pool, I don't want this war to keep going. It'd be great to avoid taking a loan. We can get rid of these mercenaries as soon as we piece out Morocco. So we're just going to take a little bit of money off of them. There we go. We can get 65 ducats. That'll help us recover a little bit economically. One of the most useful things you can do in terms of piecing out an ally in a war is forcing them to end an alliance. So we could force them, let's say we weren't going to be able to take all of Granada, we could force them to end their alliance with Granada if we had enough war score. That will let you break up nasty alliance chains that would otherwise prevent you from expanding into areas. So we'll go ahead and take these guys out of the war. A hollow victory on this front. Yada, yada, yada. We'll get our armies back in here. And where are all of our mercenaries? We're going to detach all the mercenaries. We don't need them anymore. We're going to disband them. That way we are no longer over our force limit, because being over your force limit increases the amount of maintenance you pay, and it gets more and more and more punishing as you exceed your force limit more and more and more. So since we're Castile, we're going to be making a bunch of money already. So for example, the whole breaking alliances thing. Let's say we wanted to declare on Aragon. They're allied with Ferrara, the Pope, and Florence. If we had some way to fight, I mean, I'm not really concerned about them because they're all the way over there and they're not very big. Well, the Pope's pretty big, but for the sake of the example, let's just say Aragon was allied with Morocco and we wanted to declare on Aragon next. Since we could have pieced out Morocco with a break alliance war, what would you call it? We could force them to annul their treaty with our war score and force them to accept that as part of the peace deal. That would have been a really good thing to go for, because then we could turn around, declare on Aragon. Now Aragon is not allied with Morocco because we forced Morocco to break that alliance. That's going to mean we're going to have an easier time fighting Aragon. Now, it'd be pretty hard to break Ferrara, Papal State, and Florence because they're all the way over here, and we're not really going to be able to fight them effectively. So, we now that Morocco is out of the war, we have a 100% war score on Granada, which means we can pretty much force them to give us whatever we want. In this case, we're going to take all their land. I mean, that sounds great to me. We have permanent claims on all of it, and let's just take all their money as well. Other nice things you can do, you can force people to release nations. You can force people to pay you war reparations, which is a great way to get money. You can vassalize people, force vassalize them with war. So definitely look over all of these options in terms of piecing out a war. In this case, we just want the land because we have our permanent cores on it, and it's our land. You know, take it from these filthy Granadan people. So the two things to keep in mind when you are taking land is overextension. If you can avoid it, you pretty much don't want it to be over 100% unless you're extremely powerful or know what you're doing, because as soon as your overextension exceeds 100%, you're going to get rebels all over the place. They're going to just be popping up like ants. We're only going to get 49% overextension from this. That's fine. The other thing is, we're getting 27% overextension. The other thing is aggressive expansion. If you expand too quickly, you gain these aggressive expansion mollusks with nations that are also interested in that area, interested in that culture group, interested in that land. And if you get too much aggressive expansion, if you hover over down here, it's going to warn you that some countries may form a coalition against you. So if you're just expanding, especially if you're in Italy or the HRE, where you have a bunch of high development provinces or relatively high development provinces and a ton of nations that are interested in that land, you could become the target of a coalition, and that can be a very, very quick end to your game. Because once the coalition declares war on you, you cannot piece people out individually. The coalition has to declare and withdraw from a war as one group. And if you've got like 10, 11, 12, 15 countries on you, you can very quickly become outnumbered. So let's go ahead and take all of Granada's land. We don't have to worry about our overextension, and we don't have to worry about our aggressive expansion. Send demand, and boom, this land is now ours, and we want to core it up, because once we make it a territorial core, we will lose this overextension penalty. And you can see here, our current overextension is making our people unhappy. It's increasing mercenary costs. It's increasing our corruption, which can cost a lot of money over time. The other last thing I want to touch on is war exhaustion. When possible, you don't want your wars to drag on and on and on and on, because you get all of these nasty penalties to your country when you have high war exhaustion, particularly siegeability and manpower recovery speed and the unrest. If your wars are dragging on and on and on, your country's going to become unhappy, so you're going to have to deal with rebels on top of already having high exhaustion, which means your manpower is going to be recovering more slowly, etc., etc. It can be a big snowball effect. So that's why in this case, we just went ahead and pieced out Morocco. We probably could have gotten more from them. I can almost guarantee it. We could have taken a couple of loans and paid those mercenaries to fight for us. We're Castile, we're rich, we could have done it. But I didn't want this video to go long, and I wanted to point out that you just don't want your exhaustion staying high. While you're at peace, it will automatically decrease over time. And that's it for this video, guys. Just remember, pick your battles, fight on favorable terrain, and don't siege forts with your entire army. You get no benefit from that. You get no benefit from having 20,000 guys standing there dying to attrition when you only need 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. You're just eating unnecessary attrition. That's a mistake I used to make, and I would never have manpower. So if you liked this video, please do like it. Comment on it if you have any questions, or if I didn't point anything out that you think is important. And as always, have a wonderful day, guys, and I'll see you next time.